Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading again Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.37, and we're reading the second half of the purport. 37. Well, it's not 36, it's 37. I mean, that's what I was told to speak on the second half. Does anyone have Madri? So I was hoping Divyangi would do the Sanskrit for me because she does so nicely. Jai Krishna, you want to do it? Thank you. Anyone else? Paramena samadhina bhavankalpa vikalpesu navimagdadakarichit etamatam smaratita paramena samarita kalpesu. Okay, so the transliteration, etāvat, this, matam, the conclusion, samastita, remain fixed, paramena, by the Supreme, samadhina, concentration of the mind, bhavan, yourself, kalpa, intermediate devastation, vikalpesu, in the final devastation, navim yati, will never bewilder, karchit, anything like complacency. Translation, O Brahma, just follow the conclusion by fixed concentration of mind, and no pride will disturb you, neither in the partial nor in the final devastation. So we have done this very long purport, the first half, and we're starting at in this stage of full satisfaction. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. In this stage of full satisfaction and detachment from the sensory world, one can know the mystery of the science of God with all its confidential intricacies, and not by grammar or academic speculation. Because Brahma qualified himself for such reception, the Lord was pleased to disclose the purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This direct instruction by the Lord to any devotee who is detached from the world of sense gratification is possible, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Te samsatata yuktanam bhajitam priti purvakam dadamani buddhi yogam tam yena mam upadyante. Unto the devotees who are constantly engaged in the Lord's transcendental loving service, priti purvakam, the Lord, out of his causeless mercy upon the devotee, gives direct instructions so that the devotee may make accurate progress on the path returning home back to Godhead. One should not, therefore, try to understand these 4 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam by mental speculation, rather by direct perception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One is able to know all about his abode, Vaikuntha, as was seen and experienced by Brahmaji. Such Vaikuntha realization is possible by any devotee of the Lord situated in the transcendental position as a result of devotional service. In the Gopal Tapani Upanishad Shruti, it is said, Gopaveso me Purushaha Purusatat Bhuva Ariba Bhuva. The Lord appeared before Brahma as a cowboy. that is, as the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, Govinda, who is later described by Brahmaji in his Brahma Samhita 529. Chintamani prakara sadma sukalpa vriksha laksha vrite susarabhira vipaliyantam lakshmi sahasra satasam brahman sevamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. Brahmaji desires to worship the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, who resides in the topmost Vaikuntha planet known as Goloka Vrindaban, where he is in the habit of keeping Surabhi cows as a cowboy, or cowherd boy, and where he is served by thousands of goddesses of fortune, the gopis, with love and respect. Therefore, Lord Krishna is the original form of the Supreme Lord, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Sayam. This is also clear from the instruction. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna, and not directly Narayan, nor the Purusha avatars, which are subsequent manifestations. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam means consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representation of the Lord, as much as the Bhagavad Gita is. Thus the conclusion is that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the science of the Lord, in which the Lord and his abode are perfectly realized. So, Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. We're born in the darkness of ignorance, but our spiritual masters are kindly opening our eyes with their torchlight of knowledge, so we offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. So, it says, unto the devotees who are constantly engaged in the Lord's transcendental loving service, priti purvakam, the Lord, out of his causeless mercy upon the devotee, gives direct instructions so the devotee may make accurate progress on the path returning home, back to Godhead. So, we hear so many beautiful stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam and all the different books that not only Srila Prabhupada has given us, but all these great previous acharyas and teachers. I mean, it's amazing, the treasure house of information and association we have from people that have personally heard from the Lord, or personally met the Lord, or who the Lord came to in a dream, or who he revealed himself and all this knowledge through the heart. So, in some cases, we see the Lord appears like Prabhupada. Prabhupada said that he didn't write these purports. He said Krishna was dictating these purports. And when Prabhupada had his heart attack on the Jaladuta, Krishna came. You know, this is a very close relationship. And there's other devotees who have the Lord appear, but not in such close proximity. According to one's realization and advancement, the Lord is going to deal with us. And actually, that's one of the reasons why we're encouraged to run forward in our devotional service. You know, it's not like we're just trying to get a name or a title or a certificate. We're actually trying to meet Krishna. We're actually trying to become his friend again, or his mother, or his servant. We're looking for that personal relationship. Otherwise, what's ever going to satisfy us? We're here in a material body. How are we ever going to be satisfied here with anything through this body and mind? I mean, it's such a burden to be, especially in this Kali Yuga. It's like so difficult and devastating. The poor living entities, I can't imagine being in the position of being a conditioned soul in Kali Yuga without having a shelter. We have such a shelter. And that's why Prabhupada, that was his mission. His mission was to light up the world with Krishna consciousness and give everyone hope and a way to attain that freedom. You know, we're just so bound up, and it's so sad. You can't even turn on the computer without seeing all this devastation. You know, it's like I turn on the computer and I go, no, I don't want to see who killed who and what girl, what got this and what happened here, you know. And then you can see the consciousness of the people. That's all they have. You know, really, people get up in the morning and turn on the radio. They're listening to news, or they're listening to all this mundane garbage and drinking a cup of coffee, and what a life. You know, we've really been given shelter. Of course, I wasn't going to say all that, but anyway. So, I was asked, I wanted to give you two different stories. And they're actually fascinating stories. One is about a devotee who the Lord directly dealt with, someone like Srila Prabhupada, someone that was an empowered person who came on a mission to give this mercy. And his name was Baladev-Vidyabhusana. And I was hearing from Indradumna Swami about him. And then also, I'm going to read you something that Prabhupada said when he gave a class. Actually, if you look at the beginning of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada dedicates his Bhagavad Gita to Baladev Vidyabhusana. And he's not a person that you hear about. We hear about Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, the 6 Goswamis. But Baladev Vidyabhusana is not someone that we hear about all the time. So, first I'm going to go back a little bit. A little bit about, okay, here's Govinda, the deity in Vrindaban. And he is happily associating with the devotees. Everyone is coming. It's just joyous. And then along comes who? The heinous Aurangzeb, the jealous, envious, narrow-minded personality. So what does he see? He sees that Govinda is more important than him to so many people, and that his temple is bigger. So what does he do? He goes after Govinda and all the deities in Vrindavan, and he starts taking down the temples. He destroys some of the temples. He starts taking down the Govindaji temple. Fortunately, the devotees in Vrindavan were warned, and they've whisked the deities off. And these are not small deities. Govinda's not small. And they were put in ponds and in mud, and just to protect them. And then there was some great kings in the area. It wasn't Jaipur at the time, but in Orissa. And those particular kings were devotees. And so the Pandits from Vrindavan who had the deities, they were hiding them. They were asking, please give shelter to the deities. And so after 50 years of the deities going from here to there to everywhere, they end up in what is now Jaipur, built by the king for the deities. So this person, Baladev Vidyabhusana, was born near Ramuna in Orissa. And after his schooling in Sanskrit logic and rhetoric, he traveled to all the holy places and heard from the saints. On his travels, he mastered the teachings of Madhvacharya. And then he took sannyas and traveled all over India and came to Jagannath Puri, where he met a disciple of Rasikananda Prabhu. And he infused Baladev with the teachings of Sri Chaitanya. So then he took formal initiation from Pandit Radha Damodar, and he spent a number of years studying Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas with his guru, and he mastered all of the Gaudiya Vaishnava's philosophical conclusions. After he mastered all that, his guru told him to go to Vrindavan and study the Srimad Bhagavatam under Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Okay, so in the history of Govindaji, there's Govindaji, he's in Jaipur, and there's all kinds of wonderful worship going on. This king, Raj Jai Singh, this is 1700, he protected Vrindavan and the deities, and he built the Jaipur area. And the deities became so important. People were coming from Mayapur, from Vrindavan, all these Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and it was becoming a very active temple. And whenever you get that kind of fame, what happens? People become jealous. So some of the Smarta Brahmins, they were called the Ramanandis, they went to the king and they said, who is this Radharani? She's not in our scriptures. She's not in the Vedanta Sutra. And these Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they have no commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. They're not bona fide. So the king, being the king and being a pious person and having to keep peace, he had to do something. So, what did he do? He actually took Radharani off the altar and put her in his palace. And of course that broke the heart of all of these Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev, they wrote to the devotees in Jaipur and they said, don't be disturbed, Radha has just left the altar to sulk due to something Krishna said. So that pacified them. So Jai Singh, he was disturbed by the situation because he was actually a devotee of Radha Krishna, but he didn't know what to do. So he wrote to Vishwanath Chakravarti. He and Vishwanath Chakravarti had all these relationships, so they would write back and forth to each other. So he told him, he said, if you want to save this tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and the worship of Radharani, you have to come here and debate. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was very old at that time, and he said, I can't. He said, if you don't, then the whole reputation of the Gaudiyas will be lost. So what happened? So he sent Baladev Vidyabhusana. And Baladev went to Jaipur to debate. And he debated with the Ramanandis. He arrived at Jai Singh's court. He engaged in an animated debate. But none of them could stand up to his keen intellect. But then they demanded a commentary on the Vedanta Sutras, written. They insisted that the Gaudiyas produce a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita in 3 months. I mean, who could possibly do that? So Baladev, he knew he could do the commentary, but in 3 months, he was distressed. So what did he do? Whatever Gaudiya Vaishnava does, he went to Govinda. And in Prabhupada's talk, he said he actually laid in front of the deity for days and prayed. And in this other commentary, it says that he prayed to Govinda very deeply for some time, and the Lord appeared to himself in a dream. And smiling, he said, quote, "My dear Baladev, do not worry. Just write the commentary, I will guide you. By my blessings, not only will that work be complete in time, but it will be faultless." So the next morning, he woke up and requested writing materials and reference books from Jai Singh. So he started writing, and at the conclusion of 3 months, he placed the books before the Ramanandis, who could do nothing but praise him, especially his commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And he called the work the Govinda Bhasya, because Govinda had dictated this to him, or empowered him. So he proved that the Gaudiya branch is also a bona fide sampradaya, a branch of the Madhva Sampradaya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So, as a result, Jai Singh granted the exclusive rights to the worship of Govindaji to the Gaudiyas, and he put Radharani back on the altar. And the king was so impressed with Baladev that he gave him the title Vidyabhusana. So, of course, when Baladev got back to Vrindaban, he got a hero's welcome. And later, he himself installed a deity called Vijay Govinda, always victorious Govinda. And he wrote a verse, bestowing upon me an ornament in the form of knowledge, he who is the most lofty led me to fame. May that Sri Govinda, whose commentary appeared to me in a dream, that companion of Radha, he whose limbs are pleasantly bent, be always victorious. He was then given the service of taking care of the Radha Shamad's Sindar temple and his samadhis in that courtyard. So I'm going to go back to what Prabhupada said in this lecture. So this is a lecture Prabhupada gave on the appearance day of Baladev Vidyabhusana, June 14th, 1970. So Baladev Vidyabhusana, you have seen in my Bhagavad Gita his name dedicated to Baladev Vidyabhusana, who has written the commentary on Brahma Sutra Govinda Bhasya. So Sri Baladev Vidyabhusana is our acharya. Baladev Vidyabhusana is a 4th generation acharya from Lord Chaitanya. So every acharya is giving a further lift, like Srila Prabhupada did. He gave a lift, and he uplifted the whole world. It's amazing. So Srila Baladev Vidyabhusana also gave a further lift to this sampradaya. What is that? Baladev Vidyabhusana wrote a commentary on Brahma Sutra, Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra, his Vedanta Sutra commentary is known as Govinda Bhasya, commentary of Govinda. So he took up the matter. He has written so many other books, Baladev Vidyabhusana. And so he immediately started for Jayapur, Govinda's temple. And this is the acharya, that unless I am authorized, unless I am empowered, how can I write? Which is what Prabhupada said in his prayers on the Jaladuta. If you empower me, my words will have potency. How will they understand my words? But if you empower me, then they will. So this is acharya, that unless I am authorized, unless I am empowered, how can I write? This is Vaishnava. Not that because I have got some A, B, C, D knowledge, I can write something. No. So this Baladev Vidyabhusana went to, Jaipur. And for 3 days continually, he laid himself flat, as like we offer obeisances, in that way, without taking food or water, asking permission from Govinda, whether I shall write or not. Of course he was ordered, but still, to confirm it, that Vishwanath Chakravarti has asked me to write. But if you confirm, then I shall begin writing. And that's what Prabhupada did too. He got the order from Bhaktisiddhanta. But then he said to Krishna, if you want to, you empower me, you help me. So Govindaji informed him, yes, you write. I give you order. I immediately write. So he began to write the Bhashya commentary in the Vedanta Sutra, and it came out very successful. Yay, Haribol. Okay, this is the example of a devotee who is directly empowered by Krishna. This is a very advanced devotee, and in so many cases, their people have descended directly from Vrindaban. We see that with the Goswamis. We see that with all of these great people. And here's somebody who is also blessed by Krishna, but from the heart, in a different way, and then directly. Okay, so, also I wanted to say that when the king, Jai Singh, left his body, he was calling the name of Radha Govinda. All right, so here we're going to Madan Mohan. Madan Mohan also went to Jayapur, and he was protected by the king. There were the 3 deities there, Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath. Okay, so, but Madan Mohan is not in Jayapur, he is in Karoli. And how did that happen? That happened because the king had a daughter. And this is Jai Singh II. And in 1972, around that area, he had a daughter that he was going to marry to a king in Karoli, or prince in Karoli. And he had to give her a dowry, right? So, okay, what do you want for your dowry? She said, I don't want jewels, I don't want cloth, I don't want any kind of wealth. I want Govinda. And he didn't know what to do. He said, Govinda's not mine to give. But she insisted, you asked me, I want Govinda. So he wrote to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he gave him the instruction to put the 3 deities in a dark room. He said, well, you can't favor Govinda and have him sent. So put the 3 deities in a dark room and blindfold your daughter and have her walk. And the first deity she touches, that deity she can take. So she did that, and just so happened it was Madan Mohan. And that is why Madan Mohan is in Karoli now, because she went there and the man she married built a beautiful temple. So, here is the person who was inspired from within by the Lord. He was a pious postman, and he was Muslim. And Indradumna Swami said, I went to the Madan Mohan temple, and with their Mangal Arti, all the devotees are yelling, Taz, Taz. And he said, I couldn't understand. Why are they, what is Taz? So he went to the priest, and he said, who is Taz? And the priest said, Taz. And he sat him down and he told him the story. And he said there was a Muslim postman who was never allowed to go into the temple of Madan Mohan because he wasn't Hindu, just like we can't go into Jagannath temple because we're not Indian. We're Hindu, but we're not Indian. So there's Taz, and there's some kind of case going on, so he's having to go back and forth to the office of the Madan Mohan temple and deliver mail. But he always wondered, he had curiosity about this Madan Mohan. And so one day, there was this whole crowd of people going in, and he asked one of the people, do you think I could go in? And the person said, sure, come along. And he took him in. The person didn't realize he was a Muslim. So there's Taz in front of the deity. And he just fell in love with Madan Mohan. So much so that for years, he would get up early in the morning and run to the temple, but he would disguise himself as a Muslim. He would disguise himself as a Muslim farmer or a Muslim whatever, just any way he could to get into the temple. I'm sorry, Hindu. He would disguise himself as a Hindu, right, to get into the temple. So that went on for years. And so one day the head priest saw him, and he said, that's the Muslim postman, Taz. What is he doing in here? So he had him thrown out, basically. So that night, the head priest, he went to the temple, and he told Taz, he said, this is the last time you'll ever see Madan Mohan. Don't ever come in again. So Taz went home, and he was crying and crying. And that night, the priest, he got this big golden plate, real gold, with all these sweets on it. And he gave it to the deity of Madan Mohan in case the deity would be hungry at night, which is nice. And he closed the doors to the temple, and he went home. And several hours later, Madan Mohan, in the disguise of a night guard, ran like the wind to the house of Taz, knocked on the door, and said that the head priest had sent these sweets for him. So Taz was just like, wow, amazing. He replied, seeing your face. So Taz said to him, seeing your face, receiving this plate of Mahaprasad is nothing less than having darshan of Madan Mohan. Because it was Madan Mohan. So later that night, Madan Mohan appeared in the dream of the pujari that had thrown Taz out of the temple, and the Lord said, you made a big mistake against my dear devotee. You have realized nothing, even after serving me for the last 15 years. By offending my devotee, you have offended me. Tomorrow morning during Mangal Artik, you will not find the gold plate of sweets that you had offered me. I have personally delivered everything to my devotee's house. Go there and you will find the golden plate. So the priest went to the altar, and after not finding the golden plate, he ran to the home of Taz, and he found him singing the glories of Madan Mohan with the golden plate in front of him. The priest fell down at the feet of Taz and apologized. The priest then took the plate and placed it on the altar, where it remains today. And during Mangal Artik, the devotees call out to Taz. During Mangal Artik, the devotees worship the golden plate, while the devotees in attendance sing the glories of Taz for the pleasure of Madan Mohan. For Taz is a pure devotee of the Lord. Isn't that amazing? So we see that the Lord's not only partial to those devotees that descend from the spiritual world to give this knowledge and to uplift people. He also appears to someone like Taz. Taz is a Muslim. He's not even supposed to go into the temple. He's breaking all the rules. But out of his love, he goes all the time. And the Lord appears to him, personally came and brought the plate. But at first, he was inspiring from within. Etāvad should go into the temple and go all the time. Anyway, that is my little class. All glories to Tas. So if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free. Yes, Malati.
Well, thank you, Jayashree. Wonderful. I don't know if I have time, but I have two. One about Madan Mohan, a personal experience. And also, in the purport, I started yesterday, I said I was going to get back to this, and I didn't get back. Prabhupada used the word cowboy.
Cowboy, right.
And that was not a mistake. That was Prabhupada's word, and thank God they haven't edited that. Sorry. So, this purport was in the second canto. So in 1967, there was no second canto. And neither did we know the word Gopa. And at the end of 1967, beginning of 1968, one devotee, Harsharani, wrote a really nice poem about Srila Prabhupada. And she described him as a cowboy and described some of the activities. So the few of us that were there at the time, we were thinking maybe it's a little childish, this poem. But somebody took it to Prabhupada, and he read the poem, and he said, this must be printed in Back to Godhead. So you'll find it. It's either in the January or March Back to Godhead of 1968, poem by Harsharani. But we were intrigued about her description of him as a cowboy, because of Americans, or a cowboy in a fringed shirt and boots and, gun on his hip. So we went to him. There was about 4 of us. We went up to his room. And at that point, we didn't know that actually this was an impudent question. You don't ask your guru about his spiritual identity. If he chooses to disclose it, that's another thing. So, but we were so curious because of his response. We asked him, are you a cowboy? And Prabhupada said yes. And ever since that time, for those of us at that moment, that's Prabhupada. And there seemed to be so many instances where that would be confirmed, like when he wanted to go around Govardhan in a bullock cart. You remember at the time of his, passage. So then, people got involved with another acharya, name omitted, but then they started arguing that acharya, but he couldn't be a cowboy, he has to be a saki, goat, blah, blah, blah. Prabhupada said yes. So that was a very sweet exchange. And then I had a personal experience with Madan Mohan, also involved in Jijñāsyaṁ Maharaj, because I was in Vrindaban and I heard they were going to be going, he had his parikramā, his disciples and friends, and I heard they were going to Jaipur. And I have a very special place in my heart for Govindadev. So I wanted to go with them because I knew there would be a lot of rich katha. So I was, invited to come along. And the night before we were going, so we arrived there the night before, and we were in hotel rooms most spread around the city. And I was with the Raval family, a family of doctors from upstate New York, very intimately involved in supporting spiritual activities. And in Jijñāsyaṁ, like when he came here and did his whole thing that was sponsored, Vrindaban, and that's the family. They sponsor his, many wonderful things that he does. So I was with that family, and we were going to go to Govinda's for Mangal Arti, and then go to Karoli. I got up early. I go down the stairs, and I get outside. I go down the stairs only. I didn't go down the stairs on my feet. I fell down. And I heard my bones crack, my feet. I heard it because it was in the morning. It was nobody else's. So now I'm sitting, and I ended up in the gutter, but thank God it was dry. And I was with Sachimata. She was with us. So I couldn't stand up, so I crawled back up, and nobody was coming, so I crawled back up the stairs. And I get to my room, and I needed some help. And Sachimata wasn't coming because she went to sleep, and so I was knocking on the door, and she got really upset with me for waking her up, so I couldn't. And then finally so I'm just waiting there, like for someone to come, and so then, the rest of the devotees came, and they wondered why I was sitting there, and I explained that I couldn't stand up anymore. So they picked me up. They put me in the car with like some kind of giant SUV, Indian SUV. We go to, and they're all doctors, and nobody's even thinking, including me, thinking about what happened to my feet. We're all just thinking like, we're going to go Govindas, we're going to, So they carry me in to Govindas, and they're holding me up, and then one of the pujaris, because I don't know if you've been there, there's kind of a barrier in front. The pujari saw that, and they called me inside along with the people that were holding me up. So that was a great mercy that I was inside. So I was sitting, then I got to sit right in front of Govinda. And then we go to Karoli. And in Karoli, it's in the old part of the town. And Karoli's not so developed, maybe a little bit more now, but not so much. So you cannot drive. It's too narrow, those roads, to get to the temple, actually. So we got as close as we could. And they held somebody over that had a motorcycle. And they asked that person to take me to the temple and get me inside. But by the time we got there, it was late, and it was closed for the afternoon. So they all decided to go eat something. At this point, I'm doing Nirjal because I couldn't sit up, and it's all squat toilets. So I just best thing is to fast. So I said, just leave me here. And when, they were going to come back. So I'm sitting alone, and it was so beautiful inside that temple. And just, when your mind shuts up and there's not a lot, there weren't horns and screaming and yelling going on because of where it was, and everything was shut down. So you just started seeing all these wonderful things, some, little creatures, little, different things, different birds, and then I heard the door opening, and it still wasn't time for the deities, so I'm looking, and in comes this sadhu, very, carrying something in his hands, which I recognize as books, but they were covered, and he sits down by a pillar. He opens a little wooden, one of those typical wooden stands. He puts a book on it, and makes obeisances, opens it up, and then more people start coming. And they're sitting around him, and he starts to read, and I could understand it was Chaitanya Chaitamrita. He was, because we've heard it enough, so I could pick up on that. So that was just, even though I couldn't get every single word, I understood what was, being said. And then finally, it became the time for the opening of the deities. And so I'm just sitting there, and now people had seen me sitting there. So when the deity curtains and the gates got opened up, there was a great rush forward, as is the case. These people from the temple lifted me up and took me right up to the front. So I had this wonderful, it was just like having a personal darshan, which, anyway, it was really wonderful. So I felt like, the blessings of the deities, and the Goswamis, because he's their deities. So that was my Karoli experience.
Oh.
It was wonderful.
Wonderful story, Malti. Thank you for sharing. Since we were talking about Govinda, I read a story a few days ago on Facebook about a gentleman named Vijay Krishna in the 1800s. And his experience, he was an atheist. And Govinda was coming to him in his dreams. And because of his past lives as a devotee. And somehow in this lifetime, he became an atheist because he was in the Gaudiya Math and he was getting lots of troubles. So he ended up just diverting completely. And Govinda, with his mercy, I guess just based on the basis of what we're talking about, the mercy of the deities, it doesn't necessarily have to be anyone in particular. So he would show up in his dreams and ask him to bring him things, and Vijay Krishna would say, I don't believe in you. And Govinda would be like, well, I don't care if you don't believe in me. Come give it to me anyways. So it's just funny little spin-off of the Govinda deities and the fact that we don't necessarily have to be a super devotee for him to love you just as much. Also, based off on what you're talking about, the empowerment of Krishna, giving empowerment to devotees and Srila Prabhupada for that matter. I just so happened this morning to read my book this morning when I was doing my seva. And it's a letter written by Srila Prabhupada on the Jaluta, speaking to Krishna and to himself because he's showing up here in America. And I just wanted to see if I could share that if you don't mind. It says, My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me, but I guess you have had some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it, but I know that your causeless mercy can make everything possible. Because you are the most expert mystic, how will they understand the mellows of devotional service? O Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. All living entities have come under the control of the illusory energy by your will, and therefore, if you like, by your will they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and most fallen. Therefore, I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. Somehow or another, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me a success or a failure as you like. O spiritual master of all the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel gladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance, make me dance. O Lord, make me dance as you like. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. Signed, the most unfortunate, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, on board the ship of Jaluta. I absolutely love that because you could see his mindset of just pure humbleness to the utmost, to a degree that I could only dream, basically.
Well, that's what we saw about Baladev Vijayabhusana too, and then we have Krishnadas Kaviraj. You know, we're still diseased, and so we think we can do so many things. We think we're intelligent or great or organized or whatever we think about ourselves. But then you see the example of these great devotees, and they're just totally dependent on Krishna, and they're praying. It's something that I want to learn to do is pray. I don't know how to pray. You go on Facebook and please pray, please pray. It's like, okay, what am I? I remember praying one time for somebody who was really in a significant position, and was really injured to the point of going to be dying. And everyone was praying, save him, save him, save him. And he was saved. But it actually, as the story went on for years, it actually would have been better for that person had they left at that point. Because after that, their life just, they became defamed, just so many things. And I was thinking, you really have to be careful. You need to learn how to pray, because you don't know what the fate of somebody is. And you're praying to have them stay. Prabhupada, when he was sick, the prayer that, Malachi, do you remember the prayer that Prabhupada told us to pray? He didn't say, please save Prabhupada, if you so desire. So he could finish his service to a spiritual master. Yeah.
And what you said is really so important, you know, who are we to impose on the will of the Lord? So we have to have that conviction that whatever he has desired for this person is best. But he will listen to his devotees, and if the devotees implore, oh, you know, it's like the boy touching the fan. All right, you know, Prabhupada tells how his father said, okay, you can touch the fan, but he'd pull the electricity out so he wouldn't hurt his finger. But, you know, kind of like that. All right, this is not my plan, but you want it, okay, take it. But as you said, it may not always have the effects or results that we had in mind. So best to let Krishna.
It would be nice to